turbocharge your scooter. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
You're not a failure. Debunking distorted expectations about adventure games and game difficulty.
Dreaming of a galaxy far, far away.
Sinclair C6 Speed. Some nutter has modded a C5 and now it's actually good.
And a big CPU anniversary along with Street Fighter II Spectrum coming up on this week's show for the week of Saturday, the 14th of March, 2026.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Hello, Dave.
Yeah. It's slightly better a morning for you, Jason. We've now entered the half-hour extra Jason bedtime part of the year.
Yep, nice and relaxed. And Chris, I hope you've had a nicer glide path. We may hopefully see more about just how Chris does get ready for an episode of This Week in Retro sometime soon.
Yes. There was no panicking before this week's show at all.
We had a challenge issued to us, didn't we, Jason?
We did. So in celebration of the ongoing Jubilee, that is Duncan's 50th, we have been put a challenge to get 50 more reviews of This Week in Retro within the next year. So if you would help us out, help Duncan out in celebrating that Jubilee, please put up a review for us on the platform of your choice. Let us know that it's up there. We do try to keep an eye on them, but we don't monitor every single podcast platform. And we'll see if we can finish that celebration strong with 50 new reviews of This Week in Retro.
Yeah, we do appreciate when you do that. Thank you very much. Another busy week this week. Shall we get straight into it?
Love to.
We should.
I am not a competitive gamer. I mean, I like to win at Archon and Mule. I enjoy getting the chance to enter my initials on an arcade machine, to score the winning points in the sports sim, all that good stuff. But there's a lot that I think I don't understand about the broader elements of competitive gaming. And by that, I mean like something contested on a level other than 2 or 3 players simultaneously engaged in some gaming contest, at the end of which there'll be a declared winner. I do understand high score tables. One of the big thrills of my early arcade game playing life was there was a bar where my grandfather would take me to play Zaxxon while he drank beer and talked to his old friends. And when I hopped back at one point and pointed out I'd set the new high score, the bar staff announced that I'd beaten the owner's score using the LED scroller thing that was hanging behind the bar. That was a great bonus. And so I do get it on some level. But there's a lot about like bigger picture global contests of gaming over doing things better or faster or whatever that I don't think I'm super tuned in with. I know when I first learned that esports was a thing, that it was on like ESPN2, I was blown away and I was more confused than delighted, and I'm not quite sure why. So Chris, of the three of us, you're the host most likely to engage in game competitions. And so rather than me guess, just tell us, what is behind this drive to compete?
Oh, look, on a surface level, it is just a great way to give yourself a game to focus on each month. You know, essentially somebody else is picking the game and it forces you to have new experiences and experience new titles, which is great. But
like
it is... But it is like racing, right? That's... Unlike book clubs, I would say it was more like racing, Dave, in that you tell yourself you're there for fun, you know, for the fun of it, maybe at a track day, but then you see the taillights of the person in front, or in the case of gaming, the score of the next player in the league, in this case, and the red mist truly comes down and it's on. And so in one of the comps, one of the groups I'm in this year, we've got a player who magically seems to put up scores right out of the gate that rival scores posted on Twin Galaxies. Not even joking. And yes, some people wondered if cheating was going on, but we've all resigned ourselves to the fact that actually a genuinely skilled player has found the group and joined in. Last year I finished second. This year I'm running seventh. And at first it made me feel like just kicking back and reminding myself that I'm just here for the fun of it. And that's what it's actually about. But there's nothing more fun than winning. So over the weekend, a switch flipped inside me once again. And now I just want to better myself and wipe the smug grin off this unknown player's face in a friendly competition just for the fun of it kind of way. But yeah, that's what drives me, is beating the other guy, Jason.
Got it. So subreddit poster Flaps1978 set all this up by sharing a story from Polygon, which they in turn sourced from PC Gamer, about a recent global gaming contest called the AGAT, or maybe the AGAT, the Adventure Game Aptitude Test. And the AGAT really is just a marketing exercise. And I may, in fact, understand marketing better than I understand competitive gaming, so we will give it its due on that point a little bit later. The idea of this agate was that players would all sign into a service which uses college exam proctoring software, essentially tools to make sure that you're not cheating by reading another screen or asking somebody else in the room for help, and to play an undisclosed adventure game from the 1980s. And you had to complete the game in one sitting and within 4 hours to be considered successful. Now, it turned out that the game was the 1987 Lucasarts title Maniac Mansion. Specifically, it was the DOS version running in an in-browser emulator. All told, about 1,000 people attempted to enter the contest, and only 2 of those were deemed to have completed the game without cheating, dying, or otherwise, failing the conditions of the test somehow. And we know, because there's at least one gamer stream out there, that players were simply dropped into the start of this game. Like, apart from an important keyboard shortcut, they were not given the manual. They weren't given a look at the large image of a bulletin board, which is one of the pack-ins. It has a lot of important context and some hints for gameplay. There is an interface in that browser window to get at the important anti-piracy check codes because it had a documentation protection system. But otherwise, this experience was actually much more like playing a pirated version of the game at random. Somebody just handed you this game on a floppy, or than the experience of sitting down to try to solve a formerly, actually still commercial adventure. You still can pay for this thing. So I think you can probably tell I'm really bristling at the way that this was structured and at the notion that you could reach any sort of conclusions whatsoever about the fact that only a couple of players, quote unquote, won this challenge. So I'll ask my colleagues, am I just getting all worked up over nothing?
No, you're right. At this point in time, games had to fit in usually 64 kilobytes of memory. And that meant things like manuals and so on just couldn't fit in there. If you look at the gold box SSI Dungeons and Dragon games, for example, they would tell you, read journal entry 25, and you have to open a book and read that. And that wasn't just as copy protection to make the experience better, but also to try and fit it in memory. And the games required you to have that. So when you opened up the game experience, started when you opened up the box and you folded out this bulletin board, which gave you clues and context, as you said, for the game and help. So absolutely daft to do it this way.
Yeah, I agree. I think they clearly didn't understand 80s gaming culture. You need the manual. That's not cheating at all. That's part of the game, like Dave said. And the difference with modern games is they include a gentle tutorial at the early stages of play. That's not how 80s games were built. So I think you're correct, Jason. This test was just set up wrong.
On purpose or accidentally, ineptly? What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, we'll get into that. I'll come back to the structure. PC Gamer ran correspondence from the contest organizers who remarked, quote, "Our 2 champs actually beat the game relatively fast, which does make us wonder if they just knew the game very well already. But hey, no crime studying for a test. They didn't know the game ahead of time, so they must have amazing memories," unquote. Which, well, yeah, of course they didn't, because on no planet was Maniac Mansion designed to be beaten in a single uninterrupted 4-hour sitting. I'm not saying that that's absolutely impossible, but for it to be likely or intended by LucasArts Game or Lucasfilm Games at the time, that would have been malfeasance. Because, yeah, I mean, Maniac Mansion does have graphics and sound and animation and so forth, but it is still at its heart, to your point, Dave, a product of the 8-bit, constrained storage, constrained memory age of game design. And when you were creating adventure content under those constraints, one of the key ways you make it possible for your players to get dozens of hours of involvement is by making the game hard. Maniac Mansion was less cruel than a lot of the text adventures and graphical adventures from, companies like its chief rival Sierra, but it's still a tough game. It's still got a goodly number of deaths, dead ends, unwinnable scenarios, and all that good stuff. Now, to give Maniac Mansion in particular a good deal of credit, they did design it with replayability in mind, which comes to play based on the characters you select at the top of the game, which, by the way, that's the first screen you would see. And you can, the streamer who is an entertainer, but makes a big point out of like, what am I looking at? Who are these people? And indeed, if you have no context for what's going on in the game, you don't know, and you don't know that those choices do impact, the path you have to take to solve the game. So, like, an aptitude test under the digital monitoring conditions they set up, that's a cute idea. Using Maniac Mansion as the benchmark is extremely silly. Like, to the point we were discussing, this is the wrong tool for the job if you're trying to evaluate, how good people are in 4 hours. To put this in car terms, as I am contractually obligated to do on this show, that would be like evaluating a Formula E race car on things like cargo capacity and cross-country range. Like, that's not what it's designed for. Maniac Mansion is definitely not designed to be beaten in a long afternoon. It's designed to keep you up late at night. You first unbox it, you come back to it the following afternoon because you've accidentally stayed up until 5 a.m. trying to solve it, and you do that over and over again until finally you make some real progress. Like if Maniac Mansion was a game you would just beat, or for that matter, rage quit and never want to come back to after 3 or 4 hours, it would have been terrible value for money. And I do actually think that the contest organizers are completely, or at least basically, aware of everything I was just ranting about. So to the question, do I think they know? I do. This is an indie studio. They've got a sideways, snarky view on classic gaming. They were looking to draw some discussion and attention to themselves. And so I will give them their credit and name them here. Well played, Woe Industries, as that is their name. You got people talking about classic adventure tropes. And as the saying goes, there's no such thing as bad PR. You got me. I am probably exactly the right blend of sweet and sour on this concept and execution. So you got me. I will say your name again. Good job on getting the attention you were after, Woe Industries. But I really do hope that nobody takes seriously the notion that this was a good judge of anybody's ability to do anything in particular. So did I just get got? Like,
I mean, even if, I was disappointed and baffled in this. And even if I try and devil's advocate this, if I try and say, if I'm a devil's advocate here, there is a skill to playing adventure games. An experience of adventure games matters. You learn to spot clues. You will read a bit of dialogue and you'll think, oh, they're telling me something here. You'll learn how to map quickly and better. You'll even learn puzzles that come up again and again. If someone played adventure games for, let's say we've got Tim Gilberts, for example. Tim Gilberts has played lots of adventure games, lovely chap, knows all about them. Let's say for some reason he'd never played Maniac Mansion in his entire life, never heard of it, and sat down blind to play it. I would imagine he would do better than average, considerably better than average, because he can apply those skills there. But even then, he's never going to get through it in 4 hours. The whole point of the game is to play it and see how things interact with each other and learn for your next time and try there. Once you get past the initial premise of an adventure game, you're in a battle against the game engine and trying to work out how to beat it that way. And that was how this worked. If we dip back to Jet Set Willy last week, which is a prototype adventure game, or its spiritual successor Dizzy, where you go around collecting things, if it wasn't for the difficult jumps and the enemies, there'd be nothing to it, nothing to the game. So they're stretched out. There's a small amount of games stretched out as much as they can here, and they had to make the games hard, and you had to take weeks to get it, or weeks till you eventually got bored and gave up on them. So I don't understand what they're trying to achieve here. What they should have done instead was take a modern Sierra game, not from Sierra himself, but a modern Sierra style game, or a modern interactive fiction game that was reasonably short, and then see how quickly people could get through it. Because those are much, much better suited to that. But of course, would that then have got the same attention this did?
Yeah.
True. I'm not big into adventure games, as you know, but one I have played is Simon the Sorcerer on the CD32, one of the first games I played on it. And I was using a playthrough because, knowing this isn't my wheelhouse, I just wanted to enjoy the story. And it was still hard. And it took me about 3 sittings, saving my spot. And there are some parts where, even though you've got a walkthrough telling you exactly what to do on each screen, you have to know exactly where to click on the screen, and that even takes some time to figure out as well.
Yeah, this is a problem with some bad adventure games, or some poor design and good adventure games. Sometimes you just can't get past something, and eventually you give up and reach for the walkthrough, and then you realise, I was never going to get that. Yeah, I could have sat here for weeks and never got that, and that's where it becomes a poor game. On the other hand, you reach the walkthrough and think, do you know, I would have got that. I reached for this too soon.
Yeah, no, it's true. So I think they should rerun this test again, and they all have to play Sphinx Adventure on the Acorn Electron.
No, like I said in the comments recently, Chris, it's one thing if you are self-flagellating, it's another for you to inspire others to engage in this form of self-loathing. Please do not follow Chris's example. Please do not play Sphinx Adventure. You can listen to the Retro Adventurers episode where we try to hold it together while we play that terrible game. Please stop making people do that. But yeah, like to your point, Dave, like for sure, like part of what got headlines out of this was that they were able to say, oh, look, less than 1/4% of the entrants, were able to beat this game. And, in the case of a Tim Gilberts, let's say, there's a voice, there's a style to different adventure game publishers and creators. If you're a Dungeons and Dragons player, that, say, certain types of adventure modules, you really better check for traps everywhere because it's going to be trap heavy. Others, talk to everybody because they're going to, more often than not, they will help you along. And there's a style that you learn to these different ones of, right, is it going to be pixel hunting? Is it going to be, I have no choice but to learn through death? All of those things apply. So there are other efforts out there to try to shine lights on faded game genres. There are things like the Text Adventure Literacy Jam and so forth. So at the end of the day, this was a cool way to get a few hundred people to play Maniac Mansion under pressure conditions. And if it does lead to revival and enthusiasm for classic point-and-click adventures, we'll call it even. Would you like to talk about how we are sponsored this week by PCBWay? Yeah, let's talk about that. They're responsible for generating PCBs and CNC milling and 3D printing and some number of other things that people will tell us about while I look at some shared projects.
Yeah, and one of my friends of the show, Lee, was talking about how you can design something in 3D and get it printed and sent to you fairly easily. So if you have a little battery flap missing, or if you have a little connector or a standoff or something, you can get them to print it for you and send it out to you, and it can fix something you maybe thought was unfixable. But the reason why we like PCBWay is their shared project library. So this is a library of projects that people have submitted, usually small projects, usually little things, not great big things, not exclusively small things though, but usually small things, little things that solve problems that don't commercially exist or are expensive, and also things that are fun to make.
Yeah, things that are fun to make, or that you can iterate on the design and order up your enhanced version from PCBWay. It's kind of a social media platform in that way. There's a project that's called a multi-port DC to DC converter that's never existed before. That is part of the name, that's never existed before. It seems to be a hookup between multiple. I'm not sure if those are in series or in parallel, but if you take a look at the project, you will find out how he's creating a DC grid out of these multiple batteries. It's a project you can iterate on at PCBWay. There's a fully 3D printed speaker. You need to add the magnets and the copper wire, but other than that, and it's kind of an old retro console style, or if you remember, it's an Amiga Walker style design. You can get it looks like a mono speaker in that format. And speaking of projects that seem big, but if you need it for your business, an AI-driven LoRa and LLM-enabled kiosk and food delivery system. So I believe that if you are, let's say, a restaurateur and you want to interface better with all those delivery systems out there, I think this is your project. It's quite the undertaking. Looks like it's Raspberry Pi based. A lot of different cameras and scales and so forth. But it's a full service kiosk to help automate that process of getting your consumables into people's mouths via somebody else's vehicle. All of these and more in the shared project section at PCBWay, a really interesting innovation available from that service, who we thank for sponsoring This Week in Retro.
It is a period of retro revival. Developer Aaron Giles has struck from a hidden base, releasing DREAMM 4.0. A major update to the emulator that preserves the galaxy's favourite LucasArts adventures. During the development, coding spies managed to implement native x64 support, shattering the limitations of legacy hardware and bringing unprecedented stability to the SCUM engine galaxy. Pursued by the spectre of obsolete operating systems, the 4.0 release introduces an entirely new UI, allowing users to navigate their library with the speed of a Jedi starfighter. While the empire of modern DRM looms, the Dream Team races to restore perfect sound and pixel-accurate visuals, restoring freedom to the hobbyists across the galaxy. Now, I'm afraid audio listeners will have to imagine what that looked like in the style of the Star Wars opening crawl. But hopefully, Duncan's done it justice, and hopefully I've not given him 4 hours of work to do there. But what does that all mean? Well, it means that DREAMM 4.0 has been released, a LucasArts emulator, and it's amazing, so I'm going to tell you about it. Starting just a few years ago, this is recent, from Aaron Giles, previously the lead developer of MAME, and who actually worked at LucasArts in the late 90s, It is an emulator for all things Lucasarts and which of course was originally Lucasfilm. It's created to be a dedicated console experience for LucasArts history rather than feeling like just MAME or DOSBox. And the result is something that should or could be better than any of the other ways of playing them. In 2022, it started with the main list of LucasArts points and clicks, even up to the Curse of Monkey Island, which is one that wasn't particularly well emulated. And the thing it did from the start, the nice thing it did from the start that nothing else really seemed to do was support for the Japanese FM Towns versions, which had enhancements over the original PC versions. Now, back then there was no kind of Star Wars flight sims or the Star Wars FPS in there, and it was Windows only. But in the space of just 4 years, it's now on Linux and Mac as of version 2 and 2.1, and from version 4, it does it better for those two as well. And for version 4 for Windows, it's now 64-bit, which makes it a bit more robust. But the biggest deal is the expansion of the Star Wars games it supports. And it already supported the main two X-Wing games, so X-Wing and TIE Fighter, both the floppy and CD versions, but it now supports the Windows versions. And it did support the rail shooters, so Rebel Assault 1 and 2, and the first 3 of the first-person shooters, Dark Forces 2 and Mysteries of the Sith, as well as loads of multimedia games. But now it's added the rest of the flight sims up to the, I say flight sims, I don't know how else to put them, space combat simulators, I don't know, up to the end of 1999. So X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and X-Wing Alliance. It's also added the Phantom Menace shooter and loads more multimedia and kind of niche titles. There's still more to add, but that represents most of LucasArts library and before the year 2000. So, what do you think, Chris? Do you think you'd play any LucasArts games this way? And what's your Star Wars game picks?
Oh, I think I definitely would. It's nice to have ways to, keep these old titles going. So I assume you have to supply your own game files?
Yeah. There's no game file supporting this, so you need to find the CDs. Not all of these are available on GOG or wherever. But just find your CDs in the box, or just reach on the shelf behind me where they all are.
Of course, yeah, I've got a growing collection as well. I think this is very cool. And if I can't get my bloody joysticks working on my 386 build, which is still causing me hassle, then this is great, because sometimes it can be tricky to get the old rigs working as we'd like them to. So it would allow me to get back into the X-Wing titles and, dare I say it, play X-Wing versus TIE Fighter for the first time ever. So yeah, I like it.
Don't believe people who say there's no campaign for it. They released a campaign called Balance of Power. So there is one to play through, because that was, people criticised that particular game because it was just an online game. I say online, but just a multiplayer game. But there is that for it. So yeah, great. Jason, what do you think?
I'm wondering if this is like a true Star Wars thing. Is DREAMM 4.0, is that the first one that comes out, episode 4, and we just have to imagine and argue what the first 3 were about?
Love it.
And perhaps the imagination that we had in our mind of what the first 3 were might be better than reality. I don't know.
I will share a story I don't know that I've shared in any particular context. Years and years and years ago, back when a consumer electronics show was more exciting to go to, it was in Chicago. This must have been 94 or 95. And Lucasfilm Games or Lucasarts was showing at the time like a pre-alpha build of Dark Forces. So it was very exciting to see, oh wow, there's going to be a Star Wars first-person shooter. It also was definitely pre-alpha. Like, it was very easy to like get stuck into walls and stuff like that. And I just remember, whoever was at the booth, was getting very overly sensitive when we were kind of like pointing like, oh, we're stuck there. Like, no, we get it. This is not really software, but they were, it was nice to see that they did clean up those issues. Yeah, it was cool to see it well before it hit market.
It really is a great game. Dark Forces game. I think the gameplay is fine, and it's more in depth and more puzzly than the other shooters. But just the idea of being in Star Wars lifts it.
Yeah. And it's amazing too, like what an impact Star Wars had on nerd culture. You joked that maybe it's going to be hard to put that scroll in. It won't be hard, because that's one of the first things that any digital titling software is done. Like, we know people are going to want to do Star Wars. In a world without Star Wars, that would have been low priority. But now, like, you can't put titling software out unless you are willing to give people that. So, it's
one of the first things I did.
The reach is far and wide.
Do you have a pick for Star Wars games to play, Jason?
I will go TIE Fighter just for the lack of anything. It's just so good.
Yeah,
and maybe I keep hoping maybe this will be the one because I assume it has to be like just the particular MIDI sounds of specific, old school PC sound cards. But I've been chasing the high of exactly what that game sounded like on the machine that I first played it. I can't remember. And I think it was Sound Blaster Pro. I think it was Pro. And just none of the videos out there, none of the re-releases I bought on, GOG or Steam or whatever, they don't quite sound right. And I think it's just chasing that sound font. So maybe this will be the thing that unlocks it.
For me, I played it on a Sound Blaster. The first one I played in Adlib, the second one I played on Sound Blaster, I think. And it sounded great. But when I play it on an MT32 or General MIDI, it sounds just like my memory of it sounds, because my memory has enhanced it to a level it wasn't back then. So the better one now sounds like what I remember it as. So this represents the majority of LucasArts games, but not all. And I'm sure there's big updates to come, but it's already a great thing to have. So thank you to Pajako for linking this. You can get it at DREAMM, and it's 2 M's, so DREAMM.aarongiles.com, so AARONGILES.com. And of course, you need to bring your own games. On to housekeeping, and I'd like to welcome 4 new patrons. So I'd like to welcome on APS, Dustin, Matt, and Atom. So thank you very much for becoming official twirlers. If someone did want to join them and support us, encourage us, where would they go, Chris?
Go on, Jason.
They would go to patreon.com/thisweekinretro. They could be like Atom and take advantage of the annual subscription offer, or they could be like Matt, Dustin, and APS and take advantage of our monthly offers. Moving on to another bit of housekeeping, I do want to mention that in the YouTube comments on our previous episode, Mr. Spudlet pointed out that the developer of the Quill visual coding system for the ZX Spectrum, who I was just referring to by his YouTube channel name of Indigo Beetle, is better known as Paul Gregory. And Paul has extensive industry credits, including but not limited to the old Freescape engine games, Driller, Total Eclipse, and Darkside, as well as the 3D construction kit that it spawned. Now to move on to another potentially more provocative issue. Bearded Matza chimed in to point out that noted racing game, The Crew, that's my second racing game mention of the day, or racing, which is frequently held up as the big, dangerous cautionary tale in game preservation, as mentioned on some recent episodes. It has been brought back to playable life by a project that one can find at thecrewunlimited.com. What's thrown me about this welcome news that we're able to share is that I read the community project notes, and it very, very clearly describes the multiplayer and online-only aspects of the game. I am quoting from them. The Crew Unlimited, or TCU for short, is a community project that revives the online-only MMOCARPG video game The Crew, end quote. And they go on to say, quote, The Crew was designed to be an online-only game, unquote. So my question is, if this is how this game was sold, why was everybody up in arms when the servers were shut down 10 years after the game came out?
Okay, so it was an online-only game. It was always that way, and that's why you couldn't play it when they shut the servers down. But for most people, it played as a single-player game. You played through a campaign as a particular thing, and you played through this roughly, supposedly 20-hour campaign. You played as a single-player game. However,
citation needed on most. How do you know it was most?
That's what I found when I've been doing some Googling. So okay. I've not played this game. I don't know for a fact. I'm also going by what Ross from the whole project that did this said about it. But the big thing, though, isn't so much that. The big thing is that this game was on sale and was selling for $30 for the complete version and $20 for the basic version, right up to December in 2023. So you could have bought this game December 2023, and then 3 months later in March, they killed it off, and then you were left with nothing. So you buy this game, and then they take it away from you. And that's what this was about, because it was closing off. I think it would be different if it was a properly online, where it was you saw nothing but other people in it, and it was an online game like, I don't know, one of these extraction shooter type things where it was free to play, for example, or you paid a monthly subscription for it. But this was a game where you paid a one-off price for it, and you got the game, and then they took it away from you. And that's what was wrong about it. I think if you bought it in 2012, I'm not sure, 2014, whenever it came out, you bought it then, and you knew it was an online game there, and you got 10 years of it, that would be fine. I don't think you'd any real grounds to complain. That you might say, oh, it's a shame I can't play it anymore. I don't think you'd feel hard done by, but because they had it on sale right up to 3 months before they did it, that's the question there. Someone buys this in November 2023. Do they not have a right to play the game for a reasonable length of time?
So the good news is they can. So that's solved. So we should keep that in mind next time this comes up, as it inevitably will.
Although not by them, not by Ubisoft themselves.
No, well, probably not. Can't guarantee it.
On to news and briefs, and the top submission this week is a picture from Christoph YDU. He's in his local Hard Off, which is a second-hand shop in Japan, and he's got a picture of a big PC desktop-sized beige thing, which is actually a PlayStation 2, which has a rewritable DVD drive in it. Now, all the PlayStation 2s I've ever seen have that kind of distinctive kind of thing I can't describe very well, and waving my hands about doesn't help either. That's based on the Atari Falcon. But even the dev units are just bigger versions of that. It's like a block of flats. But this is a weird looking thing. I didn't know it existed.
And Dr. Local linked us to a Sonic Stadium article on some development machines that have been apparently taken away from, seized with some amount of force from somebody who seemingly bought them in an office clear-out. We invite you to read more about that if you want to learn more.
Starcade 2084 links us to a YouTube interview with actor Matthew Lillard sharing his video game memories.
And Chromatic Core links us to a ZX Spectrum port of Street Fighter 2. It's mostly monochrome, of course, but it allows it to be pretty detailed, and it runs surprisingly fast, and it looks really good. Is it better than Yar Kung Fu, though? Is it better than Yar Kung Fu? Come on.
Well, I don't like Street Fighter 2, but I think this is a brilliant port of it. The game that killed the Ultima franchise for me, Ultima 8, has had its retrospective made by Modular. He's been making these fantastic retrospective videos that talk about not just the history of the games, but the history of games in general at the time it was done, and origin and what was going on. And he goes into so much depth. It's 3 hours and 20 minutes long, so it's a lot, but it doesn't feel like that. And start watching and see what you think about it. But I'll be watching it later on today.
And G7VFY shared a recently unearthed IBM sales training film, likely from the mid-1960s. And although sometimes heavy-handed, these professionally created training films from the mid-20th century of American big business, they can be oddly compelling viewing. They're definitely earnest. Unlike today when companies can and should expect any internal media to leak at any time, a film like this from the 1960s really would have been only shown internally, either part of a hiring onboarding or maybe a regularly scheduled sales conference. So you really do get a candid look at what the company wants its charges to consider their guiding principles. It's not some cynical burger-biting exposition or exhibition. Either way, it's not one of them. So check it out. A Matter of Balance is the name of the film. And if you would like to put your thumb on the scale of our coverage here at This Week in Retro, please visit our subreddit, reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro, where you can cross-post. There's no demerits for cross-posting from many of the other great subreddits out there that have retro news. So you can just cross-post things right on over. You can upvote, downvote, participate in the comments, and all of those things really do go directly into what we cover on each week's show.
Yeah, and there's always more than what we actually talk about. There's always much more to explore there. So thank you for those Redditors.
The Z80 is 50 years old, so thanks Weeping Scorpion for letting us know about that important milestone, and there's a story about it on sonicstate.com that he's linked us to, so we'll drop that in the notes. And of course we should cover it in depth, so thinking about it, Z80, Sinclair Sinclair C5, perfect. So we've covered that. So thanks,
Any
Paul.
story is a racing story if you try hard enough.
It's, well,
And you need to try really hard with this.
now look, Jason, we're talking about the Sinclair C5. This is not a racing story. This is certainly, well, it wasn't meant to be a racing product. Anyway, thanks, Paul, so aka Pajako6502, for letting us know that another Paul, aka not Pajako, aka YouTuber Odd Autos, has been modding a Sinclair C5 because why not? The Sinclair C5, for those who don't know, does not feature a Zilog Z80, as far as I know. It was, of course, Clive Sinclair's obsession and attempt to make an electric car for the masses. The result was kind of an e-bike, or more accurately, an e-trike that was motor-assisted. It was low to the ground. It was not visible on the road to cars or lorries. I have to say lorries because it was in the UK. And the user was still expected to pedal uphill in the rain on busy English roads with a top speed a smidge over walking pace. Sadly, the result was ridicule and failure, and I think that's a shame. As an electric car, yep, it was terrible. There's no getting away from that. But look at it as an e-bike, and I still say it was ahead of the curve. It was way before its time. With today's technology in the same shell, I think it's actually quite a desirable item. And maybe that's why Paul has been tinkering with one. He's replaced the 250-watt original motor with a 3,000-watt modern replacement. Not enough? Okay, throw in a 6-speed gearbox. Too much? Well, yes, that was too much because that stripped through the spokes of the original plastic rear wheels, and the braking needed to slow it down melted the front wheel, which was also plastic. So now his C5 has disc brakes up front. It has alloy wheels all round, and he's been toying with the gear ratios to try and beat his current top speed of, wait for it, 45 miles per hour. He's got his Sinclair C5 up to.
I don't think people who haven't seen a C5 know how exposed you are in this.
Yes.
I mean, you're just in this little plastic bubble.
Yeah.
Travel at 45 miles an hour would be lunacy. We've just had the Winter Olympics, and you've seen them going down these things and that's what it on basically a baking tree, and that's what this reminded me of.
That's
kind of
true.
lunacy.
It's true. It's a bobsleigh. It's a bobsleigh for the rain. I can see this thing tipping over like a Reliant Robin, but Paul seems to handle it very well, doing high-speed runs down back lanes and ripping up his own lawn, doing donuts while testing it. He did. I wanted one before this, and now I really want one because, the fact that you can mod them, that's awesome. Guys, do you want one? Or if this isn't your thing, what bit of retro kit do you think failed because it was ahead of its time and would actually be awesome with just a little touch of modern tech, besides the CDTV, of course, which we discussed last week as clearly being ahead of the curve and awesome. Jason?
Chris, you're so generous. You're such an optimist. Like, the first minute or so of this video drives home just how much the C5, I'm sorry, it was a ridiculous pile of plastic junk. Mm-hmm. And if all you're doing is just iterating on the road to bigger and better things, and you make, 100 employees or, 1,000 employees at allied firms, drive them around your campus while you're working on the next generation, that's fine. But as an earnest product, no, and no. Every ounce of derision was deserved in trying to spring this on the actual public. It is probably this space, though, a single person who wants to move at a brisk pace, transportation solution, which is still the most ripe for really somehow getting it right someday. The C5 and the Segway were both emphatically not it. And on American roads, increasingly dominated by, take your pick, a super heavy, gasoline engine SUV and a super heavy all electric vehicle, it is very difficult to imagine a place for, even more tiny single-seater car replacements. But hey, that's what dreamers are for, to dream up the right solution for these, seemingly insurmountable challenges. In other tech areas, that kind of need that next iteration, my wishful thinking answer would be magical innovation that makes it, cost effective to bring back phones with really good slider keyboards. But the real answer is probably going to be a next generation of Google Glass, something that's discreet, something that gives you useful augmented reality display that helps you navigate your world better, and which also magically doesn't create massive privacy violations. Like, I don't think that's really doable, and the answer is probably going to be it'll just happen anyway. But those are the areas where I see that happening.
Yeah, and they've tried the Google Glass idea in various different forms, not necessarily from Google, several times, and it hasn't stuck, but one time it will. Yeah. And that's how these things are. And the example I was thinking of was something, Jason, you covered a couple of weeks ago, which was a CDI. And that came too early and didn't quite work and all the rest of it. But we ended up with multimedia CD-based stuff anyway. I'm going to try and defend the C5 a little bit, because I like to support the underdog. There's a lot of things in the world that would look silly if we weren't already very used to seeing them. So when we see something we haven't seen before and it looks a bit silly, then it stands out as silly. But once we're all used to it, it wouldn't quite look as silly. And if it had caught on, then traveling at 15 miles an hour, which was the speed it was limited to in order to scut around regulations, if it had got prolific and we all headed off to work for the 2 miles to work or to schools or to wherever we're going, down to the doctors to pick up our pills, whatever, and we saw them everywhere, then that would have been fine. The problem, I think, was they couldn't very well coexist with cars on the roads, and that was the main thing with them, apart from looking very silly. But when I drive to work and I see big, endless lines of great big fat cars on the road, mostly with one person in them, and these things are, I mean, the cars are easily 5 times as much space on the road, then it does feel wasteful. And I wonder if we're ever going to get to something like these things. I wonder if we have electric, self-driven cars that we press a button and Uber sends one of these round, if they're going to get smaller and smaller because they don't need to be as big and they can work out, and we'll end up with C5 shaped things. I don't know. But they failed, of course, terribly. And it's wild that this guy has enhanced this one. You wouldn't get me near, I wouldn't even fit in a C5, but you wouldn't get me near a normal C5, and you'll certainly get me nowhere near this death trap of insanity.
Actually, did either of you even get in one back in the day when they first came out? I mean, Jason, I assume they weren't really.
Never seen one in person.
Never seen one. Okay, yeah.
A good friend of mine has one. I just have not had a chance to get in it.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Because
I'm not a good friend if they watch this anymore.
One person in our friendship group did actually have one bought by Daddy. And yeah, we just used it to pull our skateboards around. It was actually quite a good use of it.
I like the idea of something neat and more environmentally friendly and efficient, and all the rest of it. But it was before its time, and maybe in our lifetimes we'll see news stories in 15, 20 years' time about how the C5 eventually won.
Maybe. And in fact, on that, it's interesting that neither of you touched on the e-bike or e-scooter pandemic that seems to be sweeping the globe. They're all over the place over here. I assume it's similar for both of you guys. As for me, that's what the C5 was before it knew that was a thing. And let's not forget that Sir Clive, after ditching the C5, moved on to create the Zeta and the Zeta 2, both of which were bolt-on electric motors for existing push bikes. And again, that was rubbish. It completely failed. A mate of mine actually had one of those as well, and I had a go on his bike with this attached, and it was terrible. So I have first-hand experience. He sent it back because that was part of the agreement. No questions asked, send it back if it's rubbish. And it was. But now, bolt-on e-bike conversions are not only a thing, but they're so good and they're so powerful and fast that people literally freaking die using the bloody things.
Is that the metric of how good something is? How many people are killed by it?
Well, no, but what I'm saying is why that one was bad was it couldn't even push the bike up a hill, whereas now far out, the hill doesn't even exist, right?
It's a sign of uptake, yeah.
Yeah. So you could now propel yourself into a brick wall quite happily. So I do actually stand by my comments. Clive was ahead of the curve. He just didn't know what the curve was. Sadly, I live in the wrong country to get hold of a C5, although Whiteman Park Car Museum does have one on display, so I can at least look at one. I just really fancy ripping up the bike tracks around the Swan River on one of these, heading out for a nice morning coffee. It would be nice and relaxing at 7 or even 15 miles an hour. It would be slightly illegal at 45 miles an hour, but they'd have to catch me first. Oh yeah, happy 50th birthday once again to the Zilog Z80, which had nothing to do with this story. So it's time now again for our question of the week, and the question we posed to you last week was, Quad is a full Quake experience in 64K I finished it now, by the way. 4 levels to run. But
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, really. Yeah, for 64K worth of game. Yes. But anyway, what tiny piece of software, past or present, impresses you the most? So I believe we're out of contest mode.
We are.
Who wants to read out the first top answer?
SDMat22 says 1K ZX chess, so 1 kilobyte ZX Spectrum chess. He says, I still can't believe that someone crammed a chess game into 1 kilobyte. Nor can I.
That's pretty good. I bet it still beats ChatGPT as well. Binatone says, Elite, so much from so little. Oh, fantastic answer. Yeah.
Beaten Tyrone, that was.
That's what I would have thought.
Oh, what did I say?
Binatone.
Binatone. It's Binatone from this day forwards. And I've got my reading glasses on as well, so there's no excuse.
Yeah.
Jeff
Elite, amazing.
Yeah, Jeff Mendoza, who I think is, he must be leading the medals table for being top 3 question of the week this year. K. Krieger looked like a modern first-person shooter when it came out in 2004. It was under 100K. I know it used all kinds of tricks to repurpose existing Windows assets on the machine, so it wasn't really a whole FPS in 100K, but very impressive anyway. Hey, it's good enough for the likes of us. A lot of interesting answers here.
Nice.
Sax Marine Screensaver.
Yeah, I didn't. That seems very narrow, and was 7 megs. I think we need video evidence of this, and maybe we'll come back to the Sax Marine Screensaver. But very very narrow casted answer there.
Mastertronic Games in the Commodore 64 had Invader load.
Oh,
Space
yes.
Invaders you could play while the game was loading. Commodore 64 did that a lot, but I never saw it the Amstrad. Lots of other suggestions. Thank you very much for your answers this week. We do have a question for you for this week. And since we're talking about the DREAMM emulator for Lucasarts and Lucasfilm Games, what's your favourite all-time Lucasarts game from anything they ever did, whether it's the desktop adventures, whether it's blasting TIE fighters out the sky, or whether it is putting a pulley in a rubber chicken? Let us know.
And we have an amazing slate of guests coming up.
Oh yeah,
like it is back to back to back, both all-time faves and oh wow, they actually got that person on the show. So it's going to be a real exciting March and April.
Should we tell people what's happening with Chris?
Yeah, Chris, should we tell them what's happening with Chris?
What's happening with Chris?
Chris has been found guilty of a crime.
That's true.
And he's been sent to Aussie prison for a month. Chris will be. Chris is having his friend visit, so he won't be here. So for 3 weeks there'll be no Chris. Next week is your last week with Chris for you'll miss 3 episodes, so a month. But we have amazing guests booked in for it. We've also got a guest for next week as well for Chris's last episode. But you'll have to make do with Jason and I and these spectacular guests.
All-star roster, yes.
Yeah. Really looking forward to that. But that's it for this week. Thank you for joining us. Go to the subreddit, reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro. Go to Patreon if you want to. And we will see you, same place, same bat time next week.
We're 50 reviews away from hitting our target. Help us out.
Yeah, give us a review. I'm waving. Chris is waving.
We're waving.
Ollie told us off last week for not saying this, but I don't know why we didn't say it.
We did
Holly,
say it.
We're waving to you. Did we?
Yeah, we started saying
Holly.
about waving. She must have turned off early, Holly. We were all waving. We're always waving.
If you insist.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 The Gamer, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Stiles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.